People like Mike Huckabee and James Dobson have looked to say about the Newton tragedy that because we haven't had prayer in schools, or because we've turned away from God as a nation, or we've allowed gay marriage, that this tragedy happened because we turned away from God. And that's simply not true. It's the kind of theology that says we have a God that we have to please and appease and do everything perfectly for, and then everything will be wonderful. But there's been no time in history that that has happened. None. And so that's why I say people like Huckabee or Dobson have just, tried to be, I think, helpful, but they've been very harmful in the kinds of things that they are saying on the airwaves and in their web pages. The problem with events like the Newtown shooting is that people stretch for ways to explain why would God allow something like this to happen. People who are talking about God during this time period cannot bring themselves to say the word just evil. They won't talk about the role of evil in a shooting like this. And so to blame it on the lack of some kind of moral core that they think that people should have, and to not talk about evil, is to me a misnomer, and it's just bad theology. At least atheists don't stretch to try to put God in the middle of everything, to have God have to resolve a bad issue like a shooting like the Newtown shooting. In other words, I think that just a straight up humanistic viewpoint on life would tell anyone that having guns in a school is bad and having kids being shot is a terrible thing. You don't need a God to tell you that. I mean, you know this because you have common sense. But I think an atheist or an agnostic perspective on a shooting like this might be a better one vis-a-vis pontificating about what God is doing or what God isn't doing or what we haven't done to please God. It's been really interesting on Twitter the last few days in terms of people having, really interesting theological discussions about what is the proper response to the shooting, what is the proper response to having a gun or not having a gun, being a Christian. What's interesting about the pro-gun people is that it's not so much a scriptural leaning, but they look to the Constitution as almost scripture and the Second Amendment. So if you think about it, for most Christians, it's a Bible in one hand and the Constitution in another, okay? And those things to them intersect because they consider the Constitution to be a divinely inspired document. Having said that, I think they can come together on some points. I think with the point that where Christians who are gun owners and those who are not gun owners may come together is the assault on assault weapons. I think the ban on assault weapons might be the place where this could happen. I'm not sure it's going to happen about handguns or rifles or anything else. I think those things are way too ingrained in American culture for people to give them up. But I do think this might be a moment to get an assault weapons ban that both Christians and non-Christians could agree with.